Amelie walked into the family dinner in Nairobi hoping for peace. She had spent years working hard to buy her own house, and all she wanted was a quiet evening with her parents. But as soon as she sat down, the smiles turned sharp. Her mother slid a stack of papers across the table and her father cleared his throat. "Sign this," he said, "your brother needs the house more than you do." At first Amelie thought it was a joke, but then she saw it clearly, loan papers that would hand her fully paid-for home to her spoiled brother, Sizwe, the same brother who wasted money and never lifted a finger to help himself. Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Her parents were serious. They wanted to strip her of everything she had built. Sizwe leaned back smugly, certain he had already won. The betrayal was so sharp it left Amelie frozen. Then, just when the pressure felt unbearable, the door opened. In walked her lawyer, calm and collected, holding the original deed to the house. The room went silent as he flipped to a hidden clause no one else had noticed. With a steady voice, he explained that the clause didn't just protect Amelie's ownership, it turned the entire plan back on them. Her parents' faces drained of color, and Sizwe's smirk disappeared instantly. Amelie didn't need to say a word. The trap they set for her had snapped shut on them instead. Amelie had spent years saving every single cent she could. She skipped parties, wore the same clothes for years, and even worked extra shifts just to make her dream come true. Finally, she bought her own little house in Cape Town. To her, it wasn't just a house. It was proof that all her sacrifices had been worth it. She would sit on her porch every evening, proud that she had done it on her own, without help from anyone. But her brother Sizwe, the golden child of the family, was nothing like her. He wasted money on failed businesses, borrowed from friends, and never paid it back. Each time he messed up, their parents would rescue him. They said, "He's just trying to find himself." One day, Amelie's parents sat her down and told her she needed to give her house to Sizwe. "Family comes first," her mother said softly, as if the words would make it easier. Her father added firmly, "You are his sister. He needs this more than you." Amelie stared at them in shock. How could they expect her to throw away everything she had worked for? She refused, but they pushed harder. Soon, they dragged her to court, confident they would win. In the courtroom, her parents' lawyer spoke smoothly, painting Amelie as selfish and ungrateful. Sizwe smirked in his chair, already imagining himself as the new owner. Amelie sat quietly, her heart pounding, but she trusted her lawyer. When it was finally his turn, he stood up slowly and held the ownership contract in his hand. He flipped to the very last page. The room went silent as he began to read out loud. It was a clause no one else had noticed, a small line written clearly but buried at the end. That line didn't just confirm Amelie's full ownership, it made it impossible for anyone, even family, to take the property from her without her written consent. As the words echoed in the courtroom, her parents' faces collapsed. Her mother's smile disappeared, her father's jaw tightened, and Sizwe's confidence melted away. The judge looked straight at them, unimpressed. Amelie's lawyer closed the file and said calmly, "This house belongs to Amelie, now and always." The entire courtroom seemed to breathe out at once. Her parents couldn't look at her. Sizwe stared at the floor, stunned that his plan had crumbled in seconds. Amelie walked out of the courtroom with her head high. She didn't need to argue, scream, or cry. The truth had spoken for itself. Her sacrifices had been protected, her house was safe, and for the first time, her family's power over her was broken. The betrayal had cut deep, but the victory was hers. And as she stepped into the sunlight outside, she knew one thing clearly: blood may be family, but it would never be worth more than her peace. Amelie never thought her life would come to this. Sitting in a crowded courtroom, she felt like the whole world was watching her family tear her apart. She had worked hard for years to buy her own house, but her parents and her spoiled brother Sizwe wanted to snatch it away. The moment the case began, her parents' lawyer stood tall and started speaking like he already owned the room. He called Amelie selfish, ungrateful, and cold-hearted. He told the judge that family should come before property, and that Amelie was destroying her brother's future by refusing to hand over the house. Every word felt like a knife. Amelie sat quietly, her hands folded on her lap, her heart racing but her face calm. She knew the truth was on her side. Across the room, Sizwe sat with a smug grin plastered on his face. He leaned back in his chair, whispering to his friends, already acting like he had won. He thought the house was his, that his sister's silence meant defeat. Amelie looked at him once, but she quickly turned her eyes back to her lawyer, who was patiently waiting for his turn. When the judge finally nodded, Amelie's lawyer rose from his seat. He didn't raise his voice or waste words. Instead, he opened the house deed and flipped to a section near the end. The courtroom grew tense as he began to read slowly, word by word. It was a clause no one else had noticed, not even her parents. But Amelie had always trusted her lawyer to find the truth. The clause didn't just confirm that Amelie was the rightful owner of the house. It also revealed a buried detail about the way the house was purchased, a detail her parents had desperately tried to keep hidden. The lawyer read it clearly for everyone to hear. The property had been fully secured in Amelie's name because her parents had once tried to use her credit for a failed business deal, and this clause was placed to protect her from ever being exploited again. The moment the words sank in, the room shifted. People whispered, gasped, and turned to look at her parents. Her mother's face went pale, her father froze, and Sizwe's smirk vanished. His jaw dropped as if someone had slapped him. The secret was out, and the shame was heavier than any judgment. Amelie sat still, but inside she felt stronger than ever. The courtroom was no longer against her, the truth had turned everything around. Her lawyer closed the file gently and said, "The house is hers. There is nothing more to argue." Silence filled the room. Her parents avoided her eyes, Sizwe slumped in his chair, and the judge simply nodded. Amelie stood up and walked out with steady steps, leaving behind their lies and betrayal. She hadn't just won her home. She had revealed the truth they wanted hidden forever, and that victory was worth more than any property. Amelie had always tried to please her parents. She followed their rules, worked hard, and gave them every reason to be proud. But no matter what she did, they always seemed to favor her brother, Sizwe. They called him their pride and joy and praised every little thing he did, while Amelie was labeled ungrateful for wanting independence. It hurt deeply, but she never let it stop her. She saved every penny she could, took extra jobs, and finally, after years of sacrifice, bought her dream house in Lagos. To her, it wasn't just a home, it was freedom, security, and proof that she could stand on her own. But her joy was short-lived. The moment her parents found out, they sat her down with that same familiar smile and soft voice. "You should gift the house to Sizwe," her mother said. "He needs a fresh start, and family always comes first," her father added. Amelie froze. Hand over her home to the brother who had never lifted a finger to help himself? To the brother they always coddled while calling her selfish? She refused, but they pushed harder, dragging her to court with confidence that the law would side with them. The courtroom was tense. Her parents spoke calmly but firmly, painting Amelie as selfish, and Sizwe smirked, imagining the house was already his. Amelie sat quietly, holding on to the one thing she knew could save her, her lawyer. When it was his turn, he stood slowly and opened the deed to her house. He flipped to a clause buried near the end, one her parents had overlooked, one that protected her no matter what. As he read it aloud, the courtroom grew still. The clause didn't just stop them from taking her house, it ensured they could never interfere with her property again. Every word made her parents' faces fall, and Sizwe's smirk disappeared completely. The power they thought they had over her was gone, replaced by silence that was heavier than any scream. People in the courtroom looked on, amazed at how quickly the tables had turned. Amelie felt a rush of relief and triumph, but she remained calm, letting the law speak for her. When the judge ruled in her favor, the The room stayed quiet, her parents unable to meet her gaze, Sizwe frozen with disbelief. Amelie stepped out of the courtroom with her head held high, her house safe, and her independence intact. She had not just defended her home, she had proven that no one, not even family, could take what she had earned. In that silence, louder than any scream, she felt the sweetest victory she had ever known. Amelie had always believed that family meant trust, love, and support. She had worked tirelessly to buy her own house, saving every penny, skipping luxuries, and pouring her heart into making a home she could be proud of. Finally, after years of sacrifice, she had the keys in her hand and the deed in her name. It should have been a moment of joy, but her parents had other plans. One evening, her mother smiled sweetly as she slid a thick stack of papers across the dining table. "It's just for your brother, sign it," she said softly, as if Amelie would not notice the trap. Her father watched with a steady gaze, expecting compliance, while Sizwe leaned back in his chair with that familiar smug grin. Amelie stared at the papers, feeling her chest tighten. Hand over her fully paid-for house to the brother who had wasted years chasing quick money and failed businesses. She couldn't. Her hands shook slightly, but she held the papers firmly and said no. That simple refusal seemed to shock everyone, and for a moment, the room was still. Her parents' smiles faded, replaced by a quiet tension that hinted at the storm to come. They were convinced they could force her to obey, so they dragged her to court, confident that the law, like their influence, would be on their side. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with expectation. Her parents' lawyer spoke smoothly, calling Amelie selfish and ungrateful. Sizwe smirked, sure of his victory, while Amelie remained calm, trusting that her lawyer had prepared for every possible move. When it was his turn, her lawyer stood, opened the deed, and slowly turned to the last page. The courtroom grew silent as he began to read a clause that had been buried, overlooked, and completely ignored by everyone except Amelie and him. The clause didn't just protect Amelie's ownership of the house, it nullified any claim her parents or brother could ever make. As he read each word, her parents' smug expressions faltered. Her mother's lips trembled, her father's face drained of color, and Sizwe's jaw dropped in disbelief. The plan they had plotted so carefully, the scheme they thought was foolproof, had collapsed in minutes. Amelie sat back, feeling a surge of relief and quiet triumph. She didn't need to shout or argue, the law had spoken, and the truth had won. Her home was hers, untouchable, and the betrayal that had once seemed so powerful had been turned back on those who tried to manipulate her. As the courtroom emptied, Amelie walked out with her head held high, her heart lighter than it had been in years, knowing that sometimes the strongest victories are the ones you don't have to fight for with words, just with truth. Amelie had never imagined that her own family could turn against her. She had worked tirelessly for years to buy her house, saving every penny, sacrificing comforts, and building a life she could be proud of. But her parents and her brother, Sizwe, had a different plan. They believed that because they had always controlled her childhood, they could control her present. They cornered her with demands, insisting she hand over her house to Sizwe, who had never worked as hard as she had and had a habit of wasting money on failed ventures. They were confident, smug even, as if the house was already theirs. Amelie, however, refused to give in. Her refusal led to a courtroom showdown. Her parents' lawyer presented their case smoothly, claiming that Amelie was selfish and that Sizwe needed the house more than she did. The courtroom was tense, and Sizwe leaned back in his chair, smirking as if he had already won. Amelie stayed calm, trusting her lawyer completely. She knew he had prepared for every trick, every loophole her family might try to exploit. When it was his turn to speak, her lawyer rose quietly, opened the deed to her house, and flipped to a clause buried near the end. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward as he began to read it aloud. This was the clause her parents had forgotten, the one they overlooked in their confidence. It didn't just cancel their lawsuit, it transferred full legal control of the house back to Amelie in a way that made her parents powerless. Every word struck like a hammer. Suddenly, the predators looked like prey. Her mother's face turned pale, her father's jaw clenched, and Sizwe's smirk vanished entirely. The courtroom fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. No one spoke. The very people who thought they could manipulate and intimidate Amelie were left helpless, stripped of all power. Every plan they had made to take her house had been undone in a single, simple clause they never noticed. Amelie sat quietly, her heart racing but her face calm, as the judge confirmed the ruling. The house was hers. No words could undo it, no threats could challenge it. She had fought with truth and preparation, and victory had come not from anger or shouting, but from the law itself. As she left the courtroom, the silence followed her, louder than any celebration, and she felt an overwhelming sense of relief and triumph. The house was safe, her independence intact, and the lesson was clear: never underestimate what you cannot see, and never think loyalty can replace justice. Amelie had always believed that family came first. She was raised to think loyalty, love, and respect were the most important things in life. She followed their rules, helped when she could, and trusted her parents completely. She never imagined that the people who were supposed to protect her could turn the law into a weapon against her. But that was exactly what happened. After years of saving every penny and working hard, she had bought her dream house, a place she could finally call her own. Instead of celebrating, she found herself being dragged into a courtroom by her parents, who wanted to take it away and give it to her brother, Sizwe, the same brother who had wasted years and money without ever taking responsibility. The courtroom was tense the day the case began. Her parents' lawyer spoke confidently, painting Amelie as selfish and ungrateful. Sizwe sat there with a smug grin, already imagining himself walking into her house as the new owner. Amelie sat quietly, her heart heavy but her mind clear. She trusted her lawyer completely and knew that the truth was on her side. She didn't shout, didn't argue, and didn't panic. She simply let the law do its work. When her lawyer stood, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. He opened the deed and flipped to a small, overlooked clause. No one else had paid attention to it, not even her parents. Slowly, clearly, he read it aloud. The words revealed that the house was fully protected in Amelie's name and that no one, not even family, could claim it without her consent. But more than that, it exposed a hidden truth about the way her parents had tried to manipulate her finances in the past. The clause showed the world that their attempt to take advantage of her was not only wrong but legally impossible. As the words sank in, the courtroom changed. Her parents' faces fell, their composure shattered. Sizwe's confident smile disappeared, replaced with shock and disbelief. The plan they had spent so long plotting crumbled before their eyes. The betrayal they had hoped would succeed had spectacularly backfired, revealing their greed for everyone to see. Amelie didn't just walk out with her house intact, she walked out stronger, calmer, and more independent than ever. She had learned a painful truth: family loyalty can be broken, but integrity and perseverance are unshakable. The house was safe, her victory was clear, and the day that loyalty died became the day she claimed her freedom. Amelie's hands were clammy as she sat in the courtroom, her heart pounding. She had never expected her family to turn on her, but here they were, confident that they could take her house. Sizwe leaned back in his chair, smirking, certain of his victory, while her parents exchanged quiet nods, thinking they had outsmarted her. Amelie, however, remained calm. She trusted her lawyer completely. When the judge nodded for him to speak, she braced herself, ready for the moment that could change everything. Her lawyer opened the deed and flipped to a clause buried near the end, one her parents had completely overlooked. He began to read it slowly, making each word clear for everyone to hear. With every line, the power Amelie's parents thought they had slipped further from their grasp. The clause didn't just protect her house, it exposed their plan, showing the courtroom how they had tried to manipulate the law to take something that never belonged to them. By the time he finished, the effect was immediate. Her mother's hand trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, her confident smile completely gone. Her father sat frozen, staring blankly at the floor, unable to speak. Siswi's smirk vanished, his face drained of color, and he looked as if he might faint right there. The courtroom was silent, everyone absorbing the shock of the truth. Amelie sat quietly, letting the moment sink in. Her house was hers, untouchable, and her family's plan had completely unraveled. They had tried to destroy her peace and take what she had earned, but in the end, their own greed and arrogance had destroyed their reputations instead. As she walked out of the courtroom, the sunlight felt warmer than ever, and she carried with her the quiet, unshakable satisfaction of justice served.